Hello everybody, my name's Novi and welcome back to the channel. In 2024, I made a video talking about a few wrestlers who I thought were in make or break years. There, I defined making or breaking in terms of them being able to stay at the top of the card in AEW. That came about with all the new names coming into the company at the time. The three names I chose for the list then were Wardlow, Britt Baker, and Malachi Black. And looking back with the year of context behind us, it's funny I chose those three to say the least. Especially given now that that year of context has given us the answer to the make or break question, and none of them had make years by any means. Not just in the terms I had set, but in any terms you could possibly think of. So with hope that the names I list won't just break again, I've decided to run it back. Only this time, I'm not doing one broad make or break definition. These wrestlers each have an individual aspect about them that could make or break their 2025. And I feel like it's important to highlight each one specifically case by case. Will they rise to the top of the card? Can they hang as a solo act? Will they prove to be a young talent worth AEW's continued investment? We'll go through it all today. But first, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel down below because we're always talking Graps. First, let's talk about a guy subject to a lot of criticism upon his return last year, Adam Cole. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that because I feel like people were wrong to do so. I was one of the people doing it as well. And secondly, more importantly, people were right to criticize his work at the time. I'm starting off with that line in particular because I think if I made this list around the time that was going on, I don't even know if Adam Cole would have made the list. I feel like I would have considered his year just straight broken from the jump. Because truthfully, it's not too far to say that he was looking absolutely done in those few singles matches he got when he came back. Not to say the matchups were the right ones for a man coming back from an atomically exploded ankle, but still, he showed nothing. Sloppy work, timing completely off, unsteady on his feet, pacing was an issue. It was a mess. It's not crazy that it went down that way. I mean, his injury was gruesome, but it was still kind of crazy. It got to a point where I feel like people collectively came to the understanding that he just might never be the same. And while in many ways, I'm still not totally sure he will, but he has looked a whole lot better in the trios division as of late. Putting him alongside Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly, Black and Gold lore discussions aside, has proved to be a good role for him. It allows Roddy and Kyle to do a lot of the in-between stuff, while Adam can just come in, do the hot tag, get his shit in, and get out. Less of the focus, less of the pressure is put on him to look perfect in there. It's what they always should have done, and now we're seeing why. So what is the deciding factor in his 2025 being a make or break year? Well, I'd say it's him keeping this steady climb going. Continuously improving in the ring, continuously improving athletically, physically, to hopefully get to a point where he can have competent singles matches again. Ankle injuries are awful in the same vein that back injuries are for wrestlers, so no doubt it'll be tough. But from what I've seen, the road is forming in front of Cole. It's on him to walk down it now. Next on my list is a current tag team wrestler, but seemingly not for much longer, Anthony Bowens. The 5-tool player, while not having the best odds of being a wrestler that people still advocate for, given he's a part of an act that many are tired of, still seems to have his devoted believers, myself being one of them. Specifically, when it comes to him being a singles wrestler. In all honesty, that's less because of what I've seen in singles matches, given he's only had 12 out of his 110 total matches for AEW, but more so for how well he performs in the tag matches alongside Max Caster, where I'd say for certain he's the carry of the duo when it comes to in-ring work. Not just because Caster is such a whatever in-ring worker, it makes it pretty easy for Bowens to stand out, but also because I think he's got charisma, a good look, and a natural athleticism that impresses me every time I see him in there. So while what I'm gonna say does hinge on him having this long-awaited singles run in 2025, I'm willing to take that bet given the recent events when it comes to the Acclaimed. If it doesn't actually come to be, I didn't do this. Nobody mentioned this. But I do think it will. So his make or break condition is if that goes well. People across the AEW audience have maintained interest in this Bowen singles run for a long time, but interest in the Acclaimed being next to none right now does hurt it a ton, as well as their continuous hope for something that just hasn't happened yet. So I'd say he has to kill it pretty early on for people to stick with it when it actually comes to life. If he doesn't, it's tough to say what would happen next, because with no Acclaimed, what do you do? A tough question I hope we don't have to answer down the line. I have high hopes he could make something of it, but honestly, I just want to see it happen at this point. Moving forward now, we're going for a ride because we have an actual tag team up next in Top Flight. Now, I had to make sure this was right because it sounded crazy to me. But Dante and Darius Martin have been wrestling for AEW since October 2020. They made their Dynamite debut in September of 2020 against the Young Bucks. This is not a new young tag team in AEW at all. They've been there for a long time. And the one thing I come away with from those nearly 5 years with AEW is that they've continuously gotten worse as time's gone on. They were long known as a team that did cool, exciting, high-flying moves in their matches. Dante especially had a really sick bag at one point, which he showed off in that singles run he had a while back. But nowadays, they're not even close to that. In fact, I'm not even sure if they even do flips anymore. Additionally, the arsenal that they do utilize is nowhere near impressive as it once was. The talent around them got better, more exciting, and they've stayed the same. That's not a good recipe for sustaining momentum, and it's why they didn't in late 2022, early 23. And at this point, they're a team that the AEW audience actively doesn't want to see over more exciting teams, which is why 2025 is their make or break year as an act in AEW. At their current level, they're not a team that deserves to take up increasingly more valuable TV time. They're not a team you want to give any semblance of a push to. This year, they have to be able to show why they can be. They have to fight back against those narratives and become an exciting young team again. They have to have matches like this one and this one again. It's not crazy to imagine a world where this happens. I mean, somehow, Darius is 25 and Dante is only 23. They're still absolutely young wrestlers in the grand scheme of things. But potential stops mattering when they hit the low they've hit. It's put up or shut up time for Top Flight in 2025. Alright, now let's take things over to the women's division with Deonna Purrazzo. Throughout her time in ROH and much more recently TNA, she seemed to stick out amongst their talent pools as a solid pro. A reliable 12 points a game scorer who had the charisma to make your team's YouTube content worth watching. The kind of player you sign to your team as a great rotation depth piece to complement your young stars. However, in that role that I thought she may occupy, she hasn't been good at all. She's been more of a 4, maybe 5 point a game scorer these days, with notable bad matches against Toni Storm, Willow Nightingale, and Mariah May. Well, really bad isn't even the right word to say there. I'd much rather say boring. Because in the ring, she's completely uninteresting, many a time sleep-inducing, and it hasn't been much better outside of it either. Which to me comes across like she just doesn't have the it factor to make it on AEW TV. At least, she hasn't proved that wrong yet by any means, which is exactly what would make or break her year. Can she prove to be a productive talent to give time to on the weekly shows? Can she show off a new, more dynamic side to her in-ring work that makes things a little bit more enjoyable? People have already grown tired of what she has to offer, and I don't know if I see much myself. She has to be the one to change that mindset in 2025 by just being better, being more of the talent that people hyped her up to be. Alright, there's one last name I want to cover on this list. One many of you I'm sure would have in mind after the year that he's had. Scapegoat, Jack Perry. Way back when Jungle Boy was a wrestler I was always high on. I thought his offense was fun. He was a great underneath babyface and he had plenty of performances to back it up. I haven't forgotten what he did with Christian, Kenny Omega, and Luchasaurus in that steel cage match. There was something special there, but before the heights of that were ever truly realized, in my opinion, he switched heel, and then everything else happened outside of that, which is probably the polite way to put things. But refraining from rehashing it all, the result was him being locked away in a place we now recognize as Guantanamo Bay, and I thought there was a chance he'd stay there forever. So when he first appeared in New Japan as the Scapegoat, this new version of the heel character he hadn't fully fleshed out before he got sent to the Bay, I was pretty excited. Of course I had my worries about the whole thing, but I was willing to be a part of it and see what it'd look like first. And at first, I thought it was going pretty well. I thought he was delivering for the most part in the promos New Japan does backstage. His in-ring work wasn't perfect, but it was serviceable enough for what his matches were trying to achieve. And then I think he was building the motivation for the Scapegoat existing pretty well. Then when he came back to AEW and joined the Elite, I thought it was a great move. It made sense for the Young Bucks to pick up this young guy who they had always been high on, who had become the Scapegoat with the current motivations they were operating on. He subsequently had a great performance in the Anarchy in the Arena match, and was still being built up well as a TV character in the backstage promos. Shortly after this, at Forbidden Door, he would be crowned the new TNT champion in a pretty sick ladder match. A move that many people expected, given the rest of the Elite were holding titles at the time. His first defense of the belt would also be pretty sick, where he faced Marco Stunt in what was probably his best heel performance. Then after that point, I feel like things just fell off a cliff. Starting with the build to what would be a pretty nothing coffin match at All In versus Darby Allin, where we saw a lot of the worst aspects of his heel work shine, both in ring and out. And they would continue to do so as the months followed, as he progressively became a worse character and a worse wrestler. Then him being one of only 2 Bryan Danielson defenses in his time as AEW World Champion didn't help things at all. In fact, it only made people resent him more, as he had already been stinking it up for plenty of time before that, even if he was actually pretty good in that match. Then he had a fine feud and match with Daniel Garcia where he dropped the belt. He would work a good tag team match in Japan, then would work a pretty nothing match at Wrestle Dynasty, and we haven't seen him since. That's the big recap as to how he's gotten himself in this position, into where his make or break condition for 2025 is if he can turn himself into a wrestler that people actually care about again. The Scapegoat character is done with. They've gotten all they're ever gonna get out of that already. So whether he stays a heel without it or starts to turn back babyface, he just has to do something. Or he'll simply get left behind in an AEW world constantly getting bigger and full of more stars. Not just as the months pass by, but going all the way back to when he became a pillar all that time ago. With that, that's going to do it for the video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure to leave a like down below. While you're there, make sure to drop a comment with your thoughts on these 5 wrestlers, or even some others that are in make or break years that I didn't list. And also, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on bell notifications, because we're always talking Graps. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been Novi. Much love. Be well, stay safe, and have a good one. Peace.